Good evening, everyone. Thanks for attending this meeting of the Cabinet held today on Wednesday, the 14th of July 2021. For those that don't know me, my name is Councillor Paul Foster and I am the Leader of the Council and I'm the Chair of the Cabinet. Councillor Mick Titherington is the Vice Chair and Deputy Leader. In accordance with regulations, members of the Cabinet are attending in person here at the Civic Centre. Also present with us are our officers required to support the meeting. Only members of the Cabinet present in the Civic Centre are entitled to vote. Other members of the Council may dial into the meeting via Microsoft Teams to observe or ask specific questions on specific items. Members in the Civic Centre should please switch on their microphone to indicate if they wish to speak at the appropriate time and switch them off once they have finished speaking to avoid any feedback. Members on Teams are asked to keep their microphones on mute at all times and to use the raise your hand function to indicate a request to speak at the appropriate time. Darren or the officers will therefore then call you in. Reports will be presented by the relevant portfolio holder, after which I will bring the item into Cabinet for debate. Once Cabinet has considered the report, I will then invite other members not on Cabinet to ask any specific and appropriate questions on the item being discussed. Please note this meeting is recorded and live streamed on YouTube. The web link for this is displayed on the agenda for the meeting, which is on the Council's website. Thank you. We will now formally open the meeting. So, agenda item 1, apologies. There are no apologies as all members of the Cabinet are present. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest. If a member has a pecuniary interest, they're required to leave the meeting completely. The member can then rejoin the meeting following the completion of the item in question. Does any member of the Cabinet, have any interests to declare? Good, thank you. Minutes of the last meeting. I have the minutes of the last meeting in front of me for approval. Can I please propose them? Do I have a seconder?
Second that, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Titherington. Are there any queries or questions on the minutes? Councillor Ogilvie.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm looking at page 11, item 11, regarding the Revenue and Capital Budget Monitoring Outturn Report. Under decisions made, number 4, that the Leader of the Council would write to the residents of Buckshaw Village explaining the reasons for the decision concerning the 106 funding. Could I ask, has that letter gone out? And if it has, could myself and Councillor Moon, as the ward councillors, have a copy of said letter? And equally at the same time, it was confirmed that the council would write to the developers to inform them of how they wish to spend the allocation. Equally, has that letter gone out and has any response been received? Thank you, Chair.
To answer your first point, Alan, the letter hasn't gone out, but it will be going out in the form of a wonderful newspaper with lots of other information to those local residents in Buckshaw and Worthing, because there's much we want to share with them about the positive works and initiatives that are going on here at South Ribble. So that'll be going out hopefully in the next 2 to 4 weeks. You might even get one yourself through your letterbox, Alan. I'll make sure of that. The second question regarding whether the officers have written to the developer yet, I don't know. I'm looking at Gary.
Sorry, my understanding is the letter's been sent, but we've had no response.
Thanks, and it's not unusual that, Gary. How long do we get per response? Do we know?
No time limit.
Thanks. Okay. Any other comments on the minutes? Good. So the proposed and seconded, all those in favour? None against. Thank you. So moving on to the Cabinet Forward Plan. As we do now, the Cabinet Forward Plan is accessible via the web link on the agenda, on the Council's website. We don't publish it because by the time we do publish it, it's normally changed, changes almost daily at times. As colleagues will all know, there is much business going on over the coming months, keeps us all busy. Good to see. Any questions or comments from anyone on Cabinet about the Forward Plan? Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Chair. Just a comment about an item that I will be presenting shortly, the Council Housing Delivery Programme. I'm glad to see that it's coming up, and I look forward to presenting the report to Cabinet. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, we're looking forward to receiving that, Bill. Any other comments from Cabinet? No? Any comments from any members not on Cabinet? Good. So it's there for note. So it's noted. Right, agenda item 5, award of the contract to progress the Town Deal projects, the design services. This was a to follow report because of the fact that it was a tight programme, if you remember, for the tendering of the services. So hopefully you've all picked up the updated report that has been issued to all members today. Darren, I'm looking, yep. Basically, the officers are seeking our approval to appoint and award the contracts in the winning bidders on the design team disciplines listed below to progress the design development of the Leyland Town Deal project to Roland Stewart British Architecture Stage 3. This will also feed into any planning applications that we have as well. So it's the mechanical, electrical and plumbing services, the architectural services, structural and drainage services, landscape architects and public realm design services. And then within the detail of the reports, there's it's detailed out how the procurement was carried out. It's completely compliant and fully compliant with the procurement regulations, and the tenders have been assessed, and there's a recommendation there for us to appoint. This isn't, just to double check, where's going, this isn't in part 2, is it? I can read these out, can't I? Yeah, it's published. So under the mechanical electrical design disciplines, it's Stephen Hunt and Associates Limited. Design discipline of the structural and drainage engineering, it's for Wolga Hunter Limited. The architect is Wilson Mason LLP, and the landscape and public realm services will be Lampro Services Limited. Any questions from any colleagues on Cabinet about the bill?
Just to say, Chair, that I welcome this report. As you know, the Town Deal project is extremely urgent, and we have to have it delivered on time. And it's good to see that we're working on it and getting to where we want to be. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Bill. Any other comments? In Cabinet, the last point I will raise before we invite any questions is Cabinet and Council have already approved the expenditure, you remember, through the budget process. So this is just the appointment of the consultants. Councillor Phil Smith.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Only a comment in the sort of the scoring process. I don't think I've ever seen one with such a variance where one, on the last one, design discipline, one's got 10.38 and there's a 16. There's a huge difference in those variances, and it goes all the way through. It's not just in that particular area. I'm just looking at that one now, but is there a reason for that? Obviously somebody didn't want the job and somebody wanted it badly, perhaps. But I don't know. It's just I don't think I've ever seen one, but with such a variance in the performance of the bids, basically.
So I love it, Councillor Smith, when you ask me a question that I know the answer to. So it's to do with price, where you're seeing the biggest variance. Yeah. So what that's indicating is there was a significant difference in the price of the bids that were coming in. So in all the cases where because it's a 60% weighting, the cheapest or the cheapest price basically gets the full 60% weighting. And then what you can then extrapolate from the report, if you then, I won't mention names, but if one's down then at 18%, that means there was a significant difference in the price from those two. So it's down to pricing, which isn't unusual. What you will notice is that on the quality scores, yes, there's one or two anomalies, but they're much closer because that's more of an arbitrary assessment that the officers made. But that's down to the significant difference in costing. But what you'll be pleased to see, Councillor Smith, is it appears that in all but one, it was actually the cheapest bid that ended up winning as well through the process, even though there's a 40% quality scale against it. There's only one that didn't, but that was one of the cheapest that then did win. So there is a reason for it.
Yeah, I'm sure there is, Chair, but as I say, I don't think I've ever seen one. I asked a question whether I really know the answer, I suppose, but in the sense of that, obviously one's the price difference in the prices quoted is significant. And I note with interest also that with a quality score, somebody's gotten 0. They're written on the back of a fag packet, I guess.
They didn't answer the questions. They basically didn't submit a proposal, so which is a bit odd. Right, any other questions from members not on cabinet? Okay, Councillor Bretherton.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I've noticed in previous reports like this, we've seen the other bidders and the price that they've bid for. On this occasion, we've not got sight of what the other amounts were for the other bidders. And I'm just wondering if there's a reason for not disclosing the prices of the other bidders, and in future would we be able to see sight of it? Thank you. Sight of the other bidders' prices. Thank you.
It's thanks, Councillor Bretherton. Just before I bring the monitoring officer in, the reason that all the costings aren't in there is because we get criticised for putting these reports into part 2. So what we've asked the officers to do is provide as much information as they possibly can, but the report remain in part 1. And so the other bidders, it's commercially sensitive information that they've submitted. Although if you're a mathematical genius, you can extrapolate what their costs were. We published the winning bid. And if you do extrapolation, you can actually work through, if you're clever, what the other bids may have been. But it's because ultimately, Damien, we're attempting to make sure this is in the public domain as much as possible. Chris, have you anything to add to that?
Thank you, Chair. The only thing to add is that if you wish, Councillor Bretherton, we can share the unsuccessful bidders' prices with you. But I think the point made by the leader is correct in that it's not the price really that matters here. It's the score that the price received as part of the procurement exercise.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Any other points for anyone? Right, so let's just go back to the recommendations. It's an important decision to make. So to approve and award the contract to the winning bidders across the various design specialisms to progress the design works on the Leyland Town Deal project. Do I have a proposer, please? Thanks, Aniela. A seconder? Thanks, Mick. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, moving on. We're going to take, colleagues, agenda items 6 and 7 together as they are contingently linked. So we're now going to bring in Councillor Mick Titherington, the Deputy Leader of the Council, for the the Climate Emergency Strategy Review and the Climate Emergency Action Plan. Councillor Titherington.
Thank you, Chair. I think if you look in the report's recommendations, we are asked to note the work undertaken by the Climate Emergency Task Group, and having observed how conscientious that task group members have carried out their work and their duties, I want to add my congratulations and thank them for the tremendous work that they have been doing under the chairship of and lead member of Councillor Keith Martin. As you were aware, in July 2020, Council adopted a climate emergency strategy, and in there was a commitment for the task group to review the strategy on an annual basis. This report presents for consideration the revised climate emergency strategy. There are no fundamental changes to the aims and objectives of the strategy. And I think that Cabinet and members will be relieved to note that the One Carbon World's initial calculations of the Council's carbon footprint were indeed incorrect, and that the actual carbon footprint turned out to be almost half of the original one that was presented. Clearly, members will understand that the pandemic has severely hampered the progress in the report. In the report, reference is made to the public sector decarbonisation scheme, which is covered under another item later on the agenda. I'm asking Cabinet and will subsequently be asking Council to approve the recommendations in the report. Moving on to the climate emergency, the climate emergency action plan. You will know that in 2019, the Council declared a climate emergency. In 2020, we approved the climate emergency strategy for the borough, to which I've just referred. The strategy included the conduct of a public consultation to inform on the actions needed to reach our target of becoming a carbon neutral borough by 2030. This action plan is a result of that consultation. As I explained to scrutiny last night, the consultation has not been as expansive or as extensive as we would have liked because of the COVID restrictions, but equally there was a recognition that we had to move forward with this plan. In regard and by way of reassurance, I would emphasise that the plan is a living and dynamic document that can be adapted or amended to accommodate new initiatives or technologies as they arise, and any constructive contributions will be carefully considered. It is an extensive plan and actions are assigned timescales for implementation divided into short, medium and long term with an ongoing commitment. Each of the actions will have to be fleshed out and project managed, taking into consideration the SMART principles. The declaration of the borough to become a carbon neutral by 2030 is ambitious and challenging, but I don't believe that there is anybody who would criticise us for that. But it is a challenge that future generations will thank us for rising to meet. We cannot meet the challenge alone. That's why all our actions will require ongoing partnership working, lobbying, education and communications. And with tenacity and determinations, I believe our ambitions can be met. I want to thank the Climate Emergency Task Group again for their sterling work throughout the year, the officers, elected members and members of the public who have contributed to the formulation of the plan. And I commend it to Cabinet and will subsequently commend it to Council. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Mick. And when we get to the end of the debate and any questions, we'll just quickly go through the, if you don't mind, the individual recommendations before we vote on them. So great stuff, Mick. You know, we're passionate about the climate. We're all passionate about the climate, and it's been a challenge particularly with COVID to get to where we are today. But it's really, really pleasing that we're now presenting the strategy and the plan. Councillor Keith Martin, I'd like to personally thank as well, Keith, for your efforts in driving this forward with the working group, the cross-party working group, the all-party working group, and thank all members on that group as well for the sterling efforts that you were putting into this. This is front and centre at the top of a priority for this authority. I'd also like to thank Neil Martin and Jen, the officers, because again, passionate about the work that you're doing and wanting to actually make a real difference, because we can all talk about the climate, can't we? But we actually need to start seeing palpable actions now, otherwise it will, if it's not already, getting out of control. Last words from me on this before I invite questions from colleagues is, Mick, we just really need to get on with this now. We really need to get on with this. Any questions from colleagues on Councillor Bielinski-Gelder?
Thanks, Chair. I'd just like to say that I think this report demonstrates our commitment to climate emergency, like you said. It's thorough and evidence-based, and having carried out a bit of research, I've discovered over 100 councils have now declared a climate emergency with the completion date of 2030, and that's a cross-party declarations. Green Party, Labour and Conservative. So that's really exciting to see. I'm very proud to be part of a council which is aspirational and led the way in 2019 on tackling the climate emergency. And I'd say this is testament to the late Councillor Ken Jones and his wife, Councillor Sue Jones, who've continued to promote this work, and also to Councillor Keith Martin for chairing the cross-party group. I'd also like to remind the Cabinet that in 2019, a majority of the Conservative Party in South Ribble abstained on the 2030 target, which I found astonishing at the time. The environment has been on the agenda since the 1970s, when the World Conservation Strategy was first written. And I remember studying geography, and one of the lecturers put up a picture of the moon and the Earth. And that is when they went into space for the first time and took a picture back of the Earth. That's when they realised actually that it's not about climate change for me, really, it's about resource management. And it's really pleasing to see that all that is included in there. We literally have no time to waste. So 50 years of hurt indeed. We have seen this year, the Canadian population of British Columbia suffering under the highest temperatures ever recorded, and some people dying. And I therefore welcome this report and look forward to seeing the action plan implemented for our children and our children's children.
Great stuff. Thanks, Daniela. Couldn't agree more. Any other questions from points from members on Cabinet? Any questions from members not on Cabinet? Councillor Karen Walton.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question about the information of the One Carbon World report. It's said to be inserted on receipt for this Cabinet meeting. Have we received the new report, and will the figures be accurate in the future, seeing as this report for 2018-19 was so inaccurate?
Mick?
We haven't seen that. As soon as we get it, that will be reported. I would say that as a council, when we employ any consultants, we would expect them, when they produce any evidence or any reports, that what's contained within that is accurate and can be relied upon. And I think that, given the experience that we've had on this occasion, then we will be even extra vigilant when we do get the revised figures. So all I can assure you is that, we will, acting on the council's behalf, make sure that when we do get reports like this, that they are accurate.
Yeah, and thanks, Mick. And remember, Karen, back in 18-19 as well, the council had very limited accurate data on its assets, for example. So how then you can work out what your carbon footprint is on assets that you don't actually know that you own or not is quite a challenge, isn't it? So this has all been, as you know, Karen's improved now, and so you're right. If there's only one thing worse than no data, and it's inaccurate data. I totally agree. Neil Martin.
Thank you, Chair. Just to confirm, the mistake in the One Carbon World was on their side with moving the figures across. We've identified that this year going through the figures, and we are doing the calculations ourselves and using national data to justify everything. So there won't be a mistake again in the future.
Okay, thanks, Neil. Any other questions? Councillor Alan Ogilvie.
Yeah, it's really just a comment, Chair. Yes, I would also like to commend those that have been involved in putting forward these two documents. They are very, very detailed in terms of the volume of information that's on there. It just reiterates the size of the challenge that we face in achieving 2030. As I've said before, the council operations, in terms of the carbon wedge across the borough, the council's operations represent just 0.4% of that total reduction that's required. So we are absolutely, totally dependent on partnership with various external agencies. I note in the action plan that, for example, making it more local, that LCC are involved in a lot of these initiatives. If I could just ask what discussions have already taken place with Lancashire County Council in trying to start addressing some of these issues. And just my final comment is the slight disappointment I've got with the action plan is that it's full of aspirational ideas, but there's been no attempt to quantify what benefit each of those actions may make towards the 700,000 kiloton reduction target that we need. So if, for example, we met every single action on that action plan, what does that actually mean? Does that come to 500,000 kilotons? 700,000, the wedge that we need to do? Does it actually make even more than that? It's just, I accept you'll probably get data and information as time goes on, but I just felt it was something that was fundamentally lacking in the action plan as it stands at the moment. Thanks, Chair.
Well, on your first question, the Climate Emergency Task Group receive and consider reports on a continual basis and are regularly in touch with Lancashire County Council, and indeed representatives have come before that committee and presented to them on the work that Lancashire County Council have been involved in and how we can work in a collaborative way in delivering our action plan. In terms of the sort of the suggestion that there is a lack of information, I mean, I think that sort of, to an extent, undermines the amount of work that has gone in by officers and others in terms of calculating what should go into the action plan and what actions need to be taken in order for us to realise our ambitions in relation to 2030. But you know, as I tried to say in my opening remarks, it's ongoing. I mean, we've got to continue to sort of examine and look at initiatives, ensure that when new technologies become available, that we deal with them. I mean, I think it does in the report talk about short, medium, and long-term measurements, and I think each of those actions that are contained within that will have to have, as I reported, a sort of project manage and consideration and forms of measurement. But I think with any action plan, you can always find something to if you like, criticise or think there is, you know, some omissions. And my, not challenge, but my response to that is that if anybody, any partnership, any individuals have anything that they think can bring to the table to contribute to us meeting our ambition to be a council, a carbon neutral council by 2030, then I can guarantee that those issues will be considered. And certainly I think that the all-party task group would also consider them in detail.
Thank you, Chair. This issue was picked up at scrutiny last night as well. So just a reminder of the response that the scrutiny panel got, which was we now intend to work these things up in detail. So some of the issues that have been raised by Councillor Ogilvie in terms of what impact those actions might have will be picked up in the detailed work that's now going to be undertaken.
Thanks, Gary. And a couple of points from me, in direct answer to some of the questions you've raised, Alan, is we could sit back and do nothing for another 2 years and try and quantify it, and that doesn't help anybody in the community. And, you know, I remember, you know, members of this council and the Conservative group saying we were mad to try and set the 2030 target. Well, I'll repeat what I said at the time, that I'll happily stand criticised if we don't make it, but we've bloody tried, you know, and we will try, and we'll do everything we possibly can to make a difference. And it will evolve, and the strategy will no doubt come back in 6 or 12 months, Mick, and it'll be changed, and the action plan will be constantly changed when new initiatives come forward. But we weren't going to hold back to provide slight more data, because we need to act upon it now. And the final point for me is in your specific question about Lancashire County Council. Good to see Lancashire County Council themselves have also set a new portfolio up, Michael, haven't they, for the dealing with the climate change, and it's Sean Turner, County Councillor Sean Turner is heading that up, and there's already been some direct dialogue between Sean and the council. He sent us an email and he wants to work as closely as he can with Councillor Titherington and the working group to do everything we possibly can together, because it shouldn't be political, this, to deal with the challenges that we face. So for me, it's just all good news, and let's try and get on and do something about it. Any other questions from anyone? Councillor Keith Martin.
Thank you, Chair. One of the questions that were asked of us yesterday was what members can do. Just give you an example. We did rough calculations, because I don't know the capacity of all your cars and exactly where you all live. I don't really want to know. But just the Climate Emergency Committee alone saved 1,000 miles in journeys travelling to and from that committee dates. We looked at council as well. I looked at council. That comes to nearly 4,000 miles saved in the lockdown, just doing online meetings. The climate committee, in theory, then saved 1/4 tonne of CO2 output. So if you extrapolate that to full council, you're looking at nearly a tonne, which is quite a significant saving without doing anything, really. Members can get involved just by looking at how they live, what they use, wrappers, how they throw away their waste. Putting bins out when they're 1/4 full all the time, it adds to the environmental impact of the borough as well. But we're also looking at working with Chorley and Preston councils, because obviously the environment knows no boundaries, and hopefully we can get something together there and pull for a bigger pot and bigger resources from the government as funding comes online. I also like to add that Mel has had quite a significant input on the Climate Emergency Committee work as well. So just to confirm that as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Keith. Any other questions from anyone? Right, good. Mick, can I just ask you, please, just to confirm the recommendations from, or I can go through them on the two separate papers that you're asking us to vote on, and I think we need to vote them separately as well, please.
The recommendations for the Climate Emergency Strategy Review are as follows. That members note the work undertaken by the Cross-Party Climate Emergency Task Group, and that members note the current carbon footprint of both the council and the borough, and that members approve and adopt the revised climate emergency strategy. So
do we have a seconder? Councillor Tomlinson seconded that. All those in favour? Great, that's unanimous. And then agenda item 7, the Climate Emergency Action Plan. Mick, can you just go through recommendations, please?
Yeah, the recommendations for the Climate Emergency Action Plan are: 1, that the draft Climate Emergency Action Plan is considered by members, and that the draft Climate Emergency Action is formally adopted by Council. In this case, by Cabinet, but it will be going to Council. That's a Council.
Yes, just to confirm before we vote on this is on the Council agenda next week, yeah? The Council to formally adopt. So you've proposed that. Councillor Tomlinson seconded. All those in favour? Great stuff, that's unanimous. Many thanks. So moving on to agenda item 8, the approval of the decarbonisation plans for the Civic Centre, Moss Side and the Leisure Centres. Councillor Mick Titherington.
I think in relation to this, if we can find the papers, well, I think the following on from the previous two reports, members will note in the decarbonisation report is that we have previously applied to the Department of Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy for a grant to decarbonise the Civic Centre. We did achieve that grant, and as part of receiving that grant, it was conditional upon us presenting a decarbonisation plan. And you will see from from this report that the plans are submitted for what would need to be the action that would need to be taken in relation to Moss Side and the leisure centres. And we've prepared those decarbonisation plans so that we will be well positioned to apply for further grants going forward. It is important that we do accept this report, and it is well, as far as the 145,000 is concerned, that has to be spent by September. And if we don't spend it by September and we don't present the decarbonisation plans, then there is a danger that will be taken back by the government. So there is a degree of urgency on that, but nevertheless, there is also an urgency that we want to get on with it. And in view of what we've said previously, then I'm asking Cabinet to approve these plans so that we can continue to get on with the work, and that we are, as I've said, suited to be able to present further bids for further funding to achieve the decarbonisation of Civic Centre, Moss Side and the leisure centres.
Thanks, Mick. Sorry, it's the decarbonisation isn't cheap, is it? And I think we're all aware of that, but the cost cannot be prohibitive to us achieving the aim. And as you've said, Mick, every little bit does help, and this is a start for us. And I also get the urgency, so we need to move with this as quickly as we possibly can. Any points or questions from any other members on Cabinet for Mick? Councillor Tomlinson?
Yeah, and what we've heard in the last two reports, obviously I welcome this. And I just reflect for those of us who've been around a while, how much the Civic Centre has changed in its fabric. It was, a 1970s, very conspicuously 1970s building not that long ago, with aluminium frames and single pane glass in some of the offices. And depending on which side of the building you sat on, you were either in an oven or a fridge. And all that has changed. And not only is it investing in our buildings, making a better working environment for our staff, but it's saving energy too. And these kind of things, the things we see in this report, are further examples of how we can go even further, and I really do welcome it.
Thanks, Matt. Any other questions on Cabinet? No. Any members not on Cabinet? Councillor Karen Walton.
Thank you, Chair. My question is, were any other consultants other than Leisure Energy approached to provide an energy report? Or could you give us some update of who Leisure Energy are?
Well, I think they were appointed before I was concerned, but I was involved. But I mean, perhaps Neil can respond to that. But in terms of who they are, in the report there, I mean, on the proposals, I think the first couple of pages are Leisure Energy about us. So I mean, on those opening pages, you will be able to sort of see what they're about. But in terms of whether others were considered, can you enlighten us, Neil?
I can. I'm just looking for it now. I can't find it in front of me. I think it was 8 companies that were originally approached and asked for quotes. Of those, 4 or 5 returned quotes to us. So while it wasn't a tender process, we basically went through a tender process to a point.
Thanks, Pete. Thanks, Neil. Any other questions? Sorry.
Just to confirm, one of the financial regs, it's 3 quotes for that level of contract, and that was met.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Councillor Brotherton.
Thank you, Chair. Just looking at the figure on page 151, it mentions £4.138 million. Have we at this stage an idea of how that will be financed? Will that come from council reserves or part of it through government grants, for example? Have we got an idea of the breakdown of how it will be financed? Thank you.
Can you just remind me what paragraph you're referring to?
It's on page 151.34. It mentions a figure there that the estimated cost of the decarbonisation improvements will be £4.138 million. I'm just wondering where that money is going to come from.
Well, hopefully it will come from the government, or when we present our bids, is that we may have to spend about 10. Well, I don't want to commit to it, but we don't know. But we might have to make a contribution to it as a council. But one of the purposes of putting the plans together is so that we are well positioned to present a bid in order to get a considerable amount towards that funding.
Yeah, thanks, Mick. So just to be clear, Damien, we're not committing tonight to £4.2 million worth of expenditure. We're committing to the £154,004 awarded, and this is we're going to commit and get that work done straight away, as Councillor Titherington has said. And now what Mick needs to do with the officers is get out there to government and other places and try and find more grant funding, or it may even come, if we need to, find it from reserves. Neil?
Thank you, Chair. Just to confirm, the 145 has already been agreed and acknowledged, and we're actually spending it at the moment. The work's underway. Solar panels.
Thanks, Neil. Yeah, solar panels are being constructed as we speak above our heads, which is good to see. Any other questions from anyone? Right, good. Mick, can you just go through the recommendations, please, and we'll take a vote.
The recommendations are that members note and consider the decarbonisation plans attached to the report, that members approve the decarbonisation plans, allowing their submission as part of the current and future grant applications for funding to assist in the carbon neutral goal, that members consider future sources of funding and programming of works identified to achieve the net carbon zero by 2030 target.
Thanks,
to Cabinet.
Mick's proposing that to Cabinet. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Bill Evans is seconding in that. All those in favour? Perfect, that's unanimous. Thanks, Mick. Three really good reports there. Important reports, thank you. Moving on to agenda item 9 is the key contracts and partnerships framework and monitoring. Members will note that we have split this reporting between part 1 and part 2. And members will also recall that we had to withdraw this from, I think it was the last Cabinet, because the papers in front of us weren't complete. So I ask members, I'm hoping that we can debate everything we need to debate now in part 1 in public, but please don't make any direct quotations from part 2, which is confidential. Hopefully, though, we can get this dealt with now in public. It's also been through, I think, the governance committee, Gary, I'm looking, and received the comments there. But basically, as part of the, I'll just read it out from me, as part of the Self-Rebellion and Governance Statement, there is an action to develop a key contracts and partnerships framework to ensure effective monitoring of key contracts and partnerships to demonstrate and evidence that they are delivering effective, efficient and economic services, providing best value for the council. And the framework is here. And as I say, there's some further backup data in, I think it's agenda item 11. What I would say to colleagues is this is an evolving document. Clearly, as we move forward and we introduce new initiatives into the authority and start doing more work with more partners, this will automatically be updated. And I'm anticipating, I think Vicky said that this will come back to Cabinet at least once a year. Chris, is that correct? You'd expect it to, wouldn't you? And we can review it. It's relatively self-explanatory. It's good to see. Any questions from any colleagues? No. Any questions from any members not on Cabinet? Okay. Will any members of Cabinet have any questions for agenda item 11, or can we just close both of them out now? Let's close it out now. So we'll just vote on it. So the framework be approved and adopted, and the performance is noted. I'm happy to put that forward to Cabinet. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Titherington, thank you. All those in favour? Okay, that's unanimous and that is adopted. We now, unfortunately, have to go into private session. Let me just read this. I move that the press and public be excluded from the remainder of the meeting for the following items of business on the grounds that it involves a likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of part 1 of schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972. Do we have a seconder? Thanks, Councillor Titherington. Does everyone agree? Yeah, and so can officers please turn off the live feed?